afternoon, and welcome to our 33rd annual James B. Mongiardo Speech Competition. I'm glad all of you are here from both near and from far to support our 7 candidates today. Everyone grows up surrounded by stories about family, about work, about place, about success, and about what it means to do right by others. These stories may come from our homes or our communities, our schools, our faith traditions, or even from our own experiences. And over time, they can shape how we see ourselves and the world around us, often in ways that we don't even immediately notice. This is today's theme, the stories that shape us. And let me tell you, you all are in for some really great stories today. They're gonna tug at your heartstrings, they'll probably make you laugh, and hopefully they will even encourage you to think about your own experiences just a little bit differently. As always, a great big thank you to our judges, Mary Turner, Dustin Combs, and Ty Reagan. Thank you three so much for allowing me to just be able to be the cheerleader down here in the first row and not actually have to judge them. Thank you. Now I will introduce our participants and we will get started. First, we have Bradley Halcomb with Autism Will Never Hold Me Back. Then Madeline Kahn with Remember the Sabbath. Then Riley Stidham with The Clay of My Life. Emma Parker with Living Peepaw's Legacy. Adriana Harrison with Step Into My Life. Michaela Stoltz with My Testimony. And Taylor Stumbo with Where I'm From, Taylor's version. Please help me welcoming Bradley to the stage.
When the topic was announced about the stories that shaped us, I realized I had to write about the story that shaped me about my life with autism. I was too young to know about how it all started, but my mom told me that I met all of my milestones when I was a baby. And I remember my mom telling me that I crawled, walked, and started talking when I was supposed to. I had a lot of words, and then after my last set of vaccines, I lost all of my words one by one until they were all gone. And that is when my parents knew something was wrong. All my words were completely gone, and I became nonverbal for years. Once they knew something was wrong, they called First Steps. First Steps is a statewide early intervention system that provides services to children with developmental disabilities from birth to age 3 and their families. They sent out a person who came to our home and evaluated me, and she told my mom that she thought I had autism. Autism is a neurological and developmental disorder that affects how people learn, communicate, behave, and how they interact with others. She told my mom that First Steps would provide someone to come into our home and give me speech and developmental therapies until I turned 3 years old. I also started going to Harlan Appalachian Regional Healthcare in Harlan to take speech therapy and occupational therapy when I was 2 years old, and I continued on until when I was a freshman in high school. I decided that it was time for me to retire after 13 years of speech and OT. She also said that I would have to go to either preschool or Head Start to continue to get services. So my mom had decided to let me start my school journey at Tri-City Head Start in Cumberland. When I first began my school journey at Tri-City Head Start, I was a bit nervous when I first walked inside the classroom, and I never knew what my year was going to be like for me until a few days later. I decided to storm out of the building, and I was planning on going back home until one of the teachers came rushing towards me and then fell into the concrete sidewalk, and I turned around and I saw where she was hurt, and I went back to her and she held on to me until someone came by to help us. Even though I was 3 years old at the time, I was very impulsive and I knew how to get back home. After the incident, they called my mom and she came down immediately to come pick me up. She was very thankful that I didn't get killed or harmed in any way. By the next day, my mom had requested that they would put in an aide with me, just to make sure that I didn't exit out of the building on my own again. continued my 2 years at Head Start and then moved on to start kindergarten through 8th grade at Cumberland Elementary School. But there was a lot of things that has been going on during my time in elementary school that a lot of people may not know about my side of the story. When I was 6 years old in kindergarten, while being nonverbal, there were times where I was in timeout and my aide would take a washcloth and put it in my mouth every time when I would try to speak. I was nonverbal and couldn't tell my mom about what was happening to me until my friend and neighbor, who was in kindergarten with me, went to my house and told my mom what they did to me. After that, my mom got an advocate to help us with the situation that was going on during that time. Then in April of 2011, I was 7 years old in 1st grade. I had an aide and also a teacher who brought in an SRO officer and thought that I made a threat to them while I was scripting a Cat in a Hat movie where the cat was making cupcakes and he accidentally cut his tail off and then says a cuss word that has been bleeped. When they brought in the SRO officer inside the room, I was scared, crying my heart out, pleading and begging for mercy because I was afraid of what would have happened to me during that time. Until moments later, my mom came into the room and saw me crying with the SRO officer beside me, and my mom said to everyone in the room, "What the hell is going on here?" And I said to my mom while crying by saying, "I not go to jail, Mom. I not go to jail." I was still basically nonverbal when that happened. My mom said to the officer, "Are you aware that my son has autism and a severe speech delay, and that scripting is a part of it because he may repeat things that he has heard?" The officer told my mom that the only thing wrong with him is that he doesn't give any discipline at home. My mom then called my Nana to come and get me and my sister, and then my mom had a big meeting with everyone. During that meeting, my mom found out that the SRO officer has been called in at least 11 times since January through April to threaten me that I would get arrested and couldn't even tell my mom or my Nana about what was happening. During this time, my mom found out that other children with special needs were also being abused by some aides and a teacher. My mom took all the information about what was happening to me and the other children to the sheriff's office and also the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. And after all of this had happened, some of these people lost their jobs and their critical report to the Harlan County Board of Education. From 2nd grade on, I had wonderful instructors who had loved me and treated me like everyone else in class. And I was so thankful to God that I had these kinds of people who cares about a student who has autism. Throughout my journey with autism, I have been given opportunities such as playing basketball from elementary school through college and now I retire back in 2024. And now I am more focusing on continuing to finish my time and majoring in communications at Elswood College and continue to sing, write songs, and play music that I love most. After I graduate from college, I just cannot wait to see what the future holds for me. If there's any lessons that I can give out to others to learn about what I've gone through, and for those who have special needs, to always know that you are special and to always know that you don't have anything to be ashamed of. And to never give up on your goals that you have set for yourself. And one last advice I would like to give to everyone is to always treat everyone with respect and treat everyone you would want to be treated. Thank you.
The stories that shape us. The story that shaped me. Me. What is my story? A few weeks ago, I would have told you about my favorite characters from the Bible, like Deborah, Jonah, Moses, and Elijah. A week ago, I would have talked about how losing people I loved and cared about have affected me. But every time I began to write this speech, I felt like SpongeBob trying to write an essay about boatmobiles stuck on the for hours. Why was it so hard to write about myself? Maybe because no single story can truly explain what it means to be me, nor explain what motivates me. To explain what it means to be me would take weeks, if not longer. For you to explain what it means to be you would take just as long. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how layered each of our stories truly are. If I were to write about Bible characters that inspired me, I could write it in hundreds, if not thousands of ways. If you don't believe me, just check out the Bible section in the next bookstore you visit. But if I had to choose something that has shaped me the most, it would be this: keep the Sabbath. This simple rule from the Bible is more than just a rule for a day of the week. It is a reminder that I do not have to exhaust myself to earn my worth. Growing up, I loved reading. I was driven by stories of adventure and fantasy. Stories like Percy Jackson, Harry Potter, Aragon, and Artemis Fowl. They inspired my love of knowledge, looking for different perspectives, and finding courage when everything seems to be fighting against me. I would rather be hated for doing what is right and make the world and then to get along with everyone for doing what is wrong. I don't need to fit in. I would rather do what is right and make the world a better place, even if it is as small a thing as holding the door for the next person. So if I didn't hold the door for you before this speech, just know that I am apologizing profusely in my mind. The Bible also played a large role in my upbringing. I grew up going to church every Sunday and Wednesday. I went to a Christian school until high school. I was even raised to read my Bible every single day. When I had anxiety attacks or anything went awry, my mom's reaction was always to pray with me and study scripture. I won't lie, there were times that I wished she would let me complain and leave me alone. But in the end, I am blessed to have a mother who did this for me and always reminded me that I have a God when I have nobody else. Back then, I thought she was trying to fix the problem. I realize now she was helping me learn how to pause and relax spiraling anxiety. She was teaching me how to keep the Sabbath in the middle of the chaos. Many things have formed me into the woman I am today. My pets, my friends, my family, my lack of exercise, my beliefs, and many other things. But one last major thing that has shaped me into the person that I am today is this school. Before I came to Alice Lloyd, I thought I was stupid, weak, like there was something wrong with me that encouraged people to stay away. I didn't even like my smile. I thought I needed to work harder than everyone else and panicked when I couldn't. But keeping the Sabbath meant learning that being good enough was more than achievement. It is accepting myself. Over these last 4 years, I have discovered that I am indeed not stupid. I just needed some guidance. I am still kind of weak, but at least I can climb up 4 flights of stairs and pretend to not be out of breath. So, I have made so many fantastic friends that make me feel special and cared for. I have even learned to love my smile. So if you are currently dealing with insecurities like myself, just give it some more time. Remember that you don't have to earn your place here. You already are here. Find friends that will take you to a field for picnics and encourage you to keep trying to write a speech for a competition, even though you would have to compete against them. Thank you, Emma. Remember to treat your friends honorably. People come and go, insecurities will whisper, but your worth will never be lost. Rest, trust, keep the Sabbath.
Everybody's story starts somewhere, whether that be a big city, small town, or right here in Pippa Passes. The things we experience throughout our lives and the people we're around shape us, our goals, aspirations, and identities. I've had many years on this earth. I haven't had many on this earth, 20 to be precise. But in the time I have had, it's been so worthwhile. I've learned so many things about myself. I've matured and grown. Not in physicality, maybe, but in character. But I stand here today, all presentable-like, and under this big shiny light to ask you, what have you let mold the clay of your life? I've been shaped and molded by so many things and people around me, and I'm so excited I have the privilege to express to you my gratitude of the things that have formed me into who I am standing before you, and why I'm choosing to pursue this wonderful life and education God has provided me with. I grew up a very privileged child, but not for the reasons you would think. I was the third child out of 4 of us, and the only daughter. I was the apple of my father's eye, and my mother's little helper in all things. We were never wealthy, but always blessed, as my parents taught me to see it. There was food on our table, a roof over our heads, and people who loved us. That is what my parents taught me mattered. And if there was ever a time in which you were truly about to go without, you lifted your head and simply asked the Lord, and He would provide. And for my family, He always did. I was fortunate to have 2 parents who loved God and never gave up on each other. They taught me the most important thing about someone was their character, work ethic, and integrity. But growing up being taught something and actually learning it are 2 entirely different things. I always believed I was a good person. I went to church, I was polite, and I always smiled. I mean, my parents always said I made them proud. What more could one want? I was always praised for something that just seemed natural to me. I could sing. I was kind and patient towards adults and children with special needs. I felt special enough, on top of the world even. Let's just say I had a very big head. It wasn't until I was around 17 that my attitude would change. I was in a wonderful program for children who struggle with depression and anxiety, as I also struggle myself. That I would find myself helping and nurturing other children who were younger than me there. Little did I know that on a particular day, I would catch the attention of the CEO's wife. She saw my caring nature and asked me if I wanted a job. 17-year-old me was working at KFC at the time, so I ignorantly replied by stating I had a job already. Thankfully, she found me very funny and retorted by asking if I wanted a real adult job. I was very confused, so I asked her what kind of job, and she explained to me I would be doing the exact same thing I was doing in that very moment for thousands of kids and getting paid for it. Much more than I was making at minimum wage, might I add. So obviously, I excitedly yelped yes. Thus, my journey and new job began the very week I turned 18. I won't lie to you when I tell you, I went into this job of becoming what is called a community support associate, thinking I was going to be some kind of big hero. I knew I was going to be working with troubled kids or children who were in and out of the system. So I pictured in my mind saving all of these kids that came my way in one full swoop, and all the glory that would come with it. And that's kind of how it felt for the first week. I was just getting to know all these kids and playing with them and making sure they were well fed up until that point. So I felt pretty darn good. I received so many pats on the backs and thank yous from people just for being in that job position. To be entirely honest though, I didn't quite understand why I was being thanked. In my head, I was just doing my job, earning my paycheck, just like everyone else. Where was all this honor coming from? That was until I really got to understand the importance of what I was doing and know these children. These kids fell into 2 categories, you could say. The ones forced to be there and the ones who didn't want to go home. Each of these had their own challenges, but I loved both of them equally. In this field, I met so many children who went hungry, without clean clothes, running water, or even basic hygienic and sanitary needs. This was their life. Some because their parents were doing the best they could and still struggled to make it. Others because they just didn't have anyone who cared. Every day, seeing those children, learning what they had or didn't, broke me as a person. Most people would see my job from the outside as me babysitting troubled youth, and honestly, I started out thinking the same thing, that it was so easy. But I learned how important my role truly was. My job was to be a role model, a shoulder to cry on, an older sister to teach the little girls how to take care of themselves and the little boys how to be gentlemen. I realized from listening day in and out to these children's stories and lives that I was so privileged to be where I am, to have what I have. What I and society dictate as basic needs that I have all been privy to my whole life were really privileges. Things like never worrying if I'm making it to school on time in the morning, or if there's something in the kitchen for dinner when I get back. Having a clean pair of socks even. These are small, minute things that I had the privilege to never worry about or even question, while it was every waking moment of these children's lives. I had the honor of getting to work with these children for almost 3 years, and let me just say, the lives of these children and their stories will forever impact me. I choose to honor them by never being ungrateful for anything that comes my way. They are my biggest inspirations and shape me in my choices every day. It is because of them that I can proudly say I have pursued my education as a communications major and will continue on to graduate school to get my license in social work and maybe even pursue my master's in social work so I can become the most productive and proactive social worker and counselor I can be, so I might be able to continue changing lives and helping children smile again. And I want to make sure that every child has what they need and deserve to grow up happy, healthy, and strong. So I say to you, after all of this, to consider your own life, all the blessings you and I are privy to, and to always look for the brighter things. I ask you to choose to recognize how God has blessed you and how He has and let yourself. My last request is that you ask yourself, what have you let mold the clay of your life? What thing or person or story or experience have you let be the potter controlling the wheel? Thank you.
My name is Emma Parker, and I'm a student here at Alloy College. People often ask me, how did you find Alloy? Or why here? Why this school? The truth is, I didn't find this place. I was shaped for it. Long before applications and campus visits, my life was being formed in a small town in Florida. That gave me my roots. And in the holler in the Appalachian Mountains of eastern Kentucky. That gave me my resilience. But more than any place, I was shaped by one man. My great-grandfather, my peepaw. And today, I'm not here to tell you my story. I'm here to tell you his, because my story is still unfolding. But his 87 years shaped the way I live mine. Those mountains weren't just somewhere I visited. They were where I learned what steady faith looks like. Not loud, not attention-seeking, just faithful. One of my earliest memories is walking into his room and seeing him sitting in the same chair with his Bible open. The room would be quiet. The pages were thin and worn from years of turning. He didn't preach at me, but he just lived it. And every time I ran in, he would gently close his Bible and turn toward me completely. Like I mattered more than whatever he was reading. As a little girl, I didn't realize how rare that was. I just knew that when he looked at me, I felt safe, I felt known, and I felt deeply loved. I didn't know that one day I'd walk into that room and the chair would be empty. There is a kind of grief that doesn't scream, it settles. It shows up in the ordinary moments, when you pass a familiar chair, or you wish you could ask one more question, or you just want somebody to see who you're becoming. Someone once wrote, "It hurts because it mattered." And that's exactly what it is. It hurts because he mattered. Because the way he loved me shaped the way I see myself. Because the way he lived still stays in me, even when I feel unsure. And it will always matter. My peepaw served in the Navy around the end of the World War II, and later during the Korean War. He carried experiences most of us will never fully understand. But when he came home, he didn't build a life around what he had survived. Instead, he built it around who he chose to be. He worked as a carpenter, he tended his garden, he showed up for his family and his church. He built homes with his hands, but more than that, he built stability. He built a faith. He built a foundation that would hold long after he was gone. Education deeply mattered in his family, but while raising children and working long hours, Peepaw made the decision to return to high school. In 1957, at the age of 30 years old, he graduated. 30 years old. And that decision wasn't about pride. It was about perseverance. It was about refusing to let circumstances decide his future. And that choice didn't just change his mind, and that choice didn't just change his life, it changed mine. There were seasons when money was tight and grief still lingered. Seasons when exhaustion showed on his face, but I never heard him complain about what he didn't have. But instead, I saw him pray, I saw him give, and I saw him stay. He didn't have much, but he never let that stop him from being generous. I remember him handing me and my sisters cookies and saying this quote, "God gave us two hands for a reason," making sure he placed one in each of our palms. At the time, it did feel simple, but now I understand it was a lesson. When life feels heavy, your hands can still be open. Even when you feel like you don't have enough, you can still give love. I still see his influence living through his son, Matthew Mosley, my great uncle Matt. The same steady devotion, the same quiet strength, the same way of loving people without needing recognition. Peepaw's life didn't end. It continues in those he formed. There are days here when I question myself, days when classes feel overwhelming, and days I question whether I even belong, and days when I feel small compared to the expectations in front of me. And in those moments, I think about that 30-year-old man walking back into a high school classroom. I think about the humility that took, the courage even, the determination to keep going even when it would have been easier to quit. And I remind myself that I come from that type of faithfulness. That is why Alice Way College feels more than just a school to me. It reflects the same values I was raised with. Hard work, faith, service, and the belief that education is not just for personal success, but for something greater than yourself. When I walk across this campus, I carry 87 years of steady obedience behind me. I carry prayers that were whispered long before I even had a name. Now I understand what he meant when he said God gave us two hands for a reason. One hand to hold on to faith when life feels uncertain even, and the other hand to hold on to people so no one has to walk alone. The chair may be empty, but what he built in me isn't, and it will never be. As the Bible says, I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. That was my Peepaw. That's the legacy he left, and that's the life I want to live. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Adriana Ray Harrison. I'm from Liberty, Kentucky, which is like 3 hours from here. It's a very long drive. But I'm a 21-year-old sophomore here, majoring in criminal justice and minoring in sociology. In my free time, I love to write poetry, songs, and even play video games. But today, I want to share the story about one person that is helping me become who I am today. When I was 9 years old, my parents divorced after my biological mother chose a different path in life. A few years later, she signed over her parental rights. For much of my childhood, I grew up without a mother. Through it all, my dad was my constant. He raised me on his own while living with a brain injury, caring for my grandmother during her illness in 2015, and working to provide for us. It was not easy, but he never gave up. He taught me resilience, endurance, and the importance of standing by those who you love. He is my hero and my foundation of my strength. But still, there was always a quiet space in my heart where a mother's love should have been. At the end of 2024, my dad met a woman named Desiree. She came into our lives with 2 daughters, Gracie and Tori. At first, I was cautious. My dad had been hurt before, and so had I. I did not know if I could trust this time that it would be different, but it was. For the first time in my life, I had someone who filled that maternal role, someone I could talk to, someone who encouraged me, someone who loved me not because she had to, but she chose to. At 19 years old, I finally got the mom I always wanted. And Desiree did not just step into my life, she poured into it. She helped me apply to Alice Lloyd College. She reminded me that I was capable of more than I believed in. She encouraged me to find my purpose instead of running from my past. Earlier this year, she gave me a letter asking to adopt me legally. That moment meant more than I can ever fully express. It was not just the paperwork, it was the choice that she chose me. Growing up, I loved pageantry because it allowed me to express who I am while serving my community. With Desiree's support, I developed my platform, Voice for Strength and Hope. That platform is deeply personal. As a child, I experienced trauma that I kept hidden for years. Eventually, it led to PTSD and struggles with my mental health. For a long time, I carried that pain silently, but with the support of my dad and Desiree, I found the courage to seek therapy and begin healing. Through that healing process, I've discovered my purpose. I am majoring in criminal justice because I want to become an agent in the Special Victims Unit. I want to advocate for those who feel unheard. I want to stand beside survivors and remind them that their voices matter. My pain is no longer something that defines me, it's something that drives me. Alice Lloyd College has also played a defining role in shaping who I am. This campus became the place where my confidence grew. My story continues. Here I have built friendships, strengthened my faith, joined esports and cross country, and even discovered a love for theater once more. In small classrooms filled with professors who genuinely care, I felt seen and supported. Through my involvement here at college, I have learned discipline, perseverance, and the importance of making everlasting memories. Alice Lloyd is more than a college. It is a home away from home. I am thankful for Desiree showing me the road that led me to become an Eagle. If Desiree had not entered my life, I might still be searching for directions. I might still be questioning my worth. But instead, I stand here today in who I am, grounded in faith and certain of my purpose. God knew exactly what he was doing when he brought her into my life, because love beats blood any day. I am truly blessed to have Desiree as my bonus mom. With her stepping into my life, I found my pageant platform. I became an Eagle at Alice Lloyd. While being here, I also got the chance to go to Camp Nathaniel, to where I got saved, and then the next day, I went to Baldwin Free Will Baptist, where I got baptized. This was a special thing, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for when Desiree told me that maybe college would be my way, my path as a human. But most of all, Desiree has poured so much love into my life, becoming the mother I always dreamed of having. One who never judges my flaws and loves me like her own. the one that's always there when I need her the most, whether it be stress from school or even from work. But I always know that from here on out that I will always have a mother behind me. And thank you for allowing me to share the story of how my bonus mom shapes the person I am today.
Growing up, we've always been taught that our stories shape who we are. Every individual has their own unique experiences tailored to them, which is ultimately what molds us into the person we are today. My story consists of an illustration crafted by a man named Jesus. Ever since I could remember, I knew who Christ was and what he did for me. I had always been surrounded by a Christian community, and I'm forever grateful for that blessing. It wasn't until 2017 that I surrendered my life to Christ and sacrificed everything for him. I remember that moment so distinctly. My dad and I were having a heart-to-heart conversation, and the Holy Spirit was present. So without a second thought, I knew I wanted to be saved. At the time, I was 9 years old, which for some might sound early, but I knew God's timing was always right. In April of 2018, I was baptized, and from that day to now, I know for a fact that I made the best decision of my life. And I can now stand firm in knowing that I've been born again, but this time in his image. I had what I like to call a Jesus high for about a year, and then I entered middle school. This was when the real world was first introduced to me. I began to be exposed to toxicity and vulgarity I didn't even know existed. I quickly realized that that was the only way to fit in and be liked by others. So I fell into the worldly ways. I started cussing constantly, listening to profane music, and acted irrational towards others. In a span of 1 year, I went from being on fire for Jesus to being captivated into the world. During this time, I was also introduced to volleyball for the first time. So I was striving to please everyone involved, and over time, it became my identity. Meaning, my priority wasn't the Lord anymore. This pattern continued until around the summer of 8th grade when I attended my first mission trip. Although the challenges I faced were difficult, I realized that there were bigger problems in this world than my own. And being a vessel for God's people was truly all that mattered. During my freshman year of high school, I wanted to continue the burning fire I had gained back. So when an opportunity to become an FCA leader arose, I felt called to take it. And being a part of that club was easily the biggest blessing God gave me during my high school career. Fellowship of Christian Athletes was not only an amazing program, but it also provided opportunities to share my faith boldly with my peers. FCA showed me that my identity wasn't found in volleyball or how people perceived me when it came to my stats, but in Christ alone. As I began my senior year, my leadership role at FCA evolved into being a character coach for my team at school. Having the pleasure of being able to hear different stories of others and seeing how the Lord can work in so many ways truly mesmerized me. This not only created closer bonds, but also even better chemistry on the court. As my final season came to an end before moving on to ALC, I experienced what I'd like to describe as my hardest point in life. For a year straight, I went through a period where God felt non-existent. Anytime I read the Bible, listened to worship music, attended church camp, or prayed, I felt nothing. The best way I can describe it is attempting to communicate with a brick wall. I didn't understand why this was happening because my life on the outside was at its peak. Graduation was approaching. I had just committed to play volleyball at the next level. Everything was falling into place perfectly. Anxiety and doubts continued as I endured a new chapter in my life, and I just had this constant feeling of emptiness. September of last year, I was free. I experienced a very difficult breakup, and I was unsure of why everything began to crumble. But in that moment, I felt the Lord again. And it was this sensation of chains being broken off my shoulders. I finally felt as if my head was no longer being held underwater, to feeling like I was walking on water. That exact experience is when I knew undeniably that Jesus Christ was real, because the satisfaction and joy I felt from simply feeling his presence again shows I cannot do life without him whatsoever. Since then,
I'm reminded that absolutely no one is perfect and everyone will fall short, because without mistakes, we wouldn't need Jesus. If you take anything from my story, I want it to be this. There's a man who died for you, but he didn't stop there. 3 days later, he rose from the grave to save every single one of you sitting in front of me. Because making mistakes, it's our nature, but forgiving them, it's in his nature. The beauty of this love is that he offers us with a choice so that we fully accept a heart posture only he can provide. The countless mistakes you make will ultimately turn you into a mature, well-rounded, but most importantly, a spirit-led human if you trust in his plans. For I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Plans to give you hope in the future. Jeremiah 29:11. The verse that saves me in my trials and reminds me everything happens for a reason. Though it might not be ideal, it most definitely has a purpose. The silence had a purpose. Although it was difficult, in the moment it truly showed me life is possible. Life is impossible without Jesus, whether you want to accept it or not. If you feel a sense of emptiness in your life, I encourage you to look towards the Lord, and he will fill that hole in your heart. Because if he can do it for me, he can absolutely do it for you too. Thank you.
Where are you from? This is a simple question that most would be answering by saying a physical place. Well, George Line took this simple question and turned it something much deeper than that. George Line is an American writer who is most known for her contributions to children's literature. She was born on April 25th, 1949 in Harlan, Kentucky, where she pursued her education at Center College. Mrs. Lyon has published 2 adult novels, 6 novels for young people, 34 children's picture books, 10 poetry collections, and more. She even had Ross Kentucky Poet Laureate from 2015 to 2017. One of her most notable pieces in her writing is her Where I'm From poem. She wrote back in 1993. This poem explores the depths of personal identity through inanimate objects, sayings, memories, and so on. Many schools across the world use this template as a writing prompt for their students. According to this template, line 12 should be about a specific family story. And as this year's theme is the stories that shaped us, if I were to use this template, my line would be, I'm from the messages shared from my older sister. My older sister, Rosalind Faye Stumbo, or as I call her Roz, is my role model. I wake up each day striving to be more like her. She is selfless, unbiased, caring, and honest, which can sometimes be a bad thing, but that's okay. She is beautiful both inside and out. Roz will stand up for what she believes in, but she's also willing to hear from the other side to an argument if it is debatable. She cares deeply for family and pets. With Roz, I feel as if I can talk to her about anything. That is why our messages are something I hold very close to my own heart. Our messages are the recipe that shapes me to be me. One example of our messages comes from a moment that should be a milestone for a teenage girl's life: prom dress shopping. My mom and I went out looking through stores. The first one we stopped at was JCPenney. When I go looking for tops and dresses, my first goal is to find something that will cover my arms due to insecurity. It is almost impossible to find formal dresses that will do such. As I was looking at all the beautiful dresses, I couldn't help but feel embarrassed. So my first instinct was to message Roz. I told her about my insecurity, and to quote her, your arms are beautiful. You are beautiful. Tay, I love you more than life. She went on to say, I wish you could see you from my eyes. Hearing her words made me confide a little bit more. With tears in my eyes, I confided more about my insecurity. She said, I believe you are beautiful just the way you are. This message defines a part that shaped me because it has taught me that everyone has insecurities. You are your own worst critic. There's always some light at the end of the tunnel, and all you have to do is find it. That day, my sister was my light. I hope one day I can be the light for someone else like she was for me that day. Not only does she know how to be the light for a person, she can also be a light for any situation. Back in September of 2024, my mom got arrested for drugs. Drugs have always played an extensive role in my life. My dad was always on and off of them for the majority of my life. I grew up with the expectation of him talking about grand things, but never acting upon them. They were just empty words in one ear, right out the other. My mom swore up and down she would never touch that stuff, though the word drugs wasn't even in her dictionary. So when I found out, my trust in her was broken. October of 2024 is when she got out. She spent 30 days right in jail. I remember walking into my grandmother's house right after school and seeing her in the kitchen. My first reaction was to hug her. Going 30 days without seeing her, I wanted to hug her. I didn't know what to do. I did, but then I decided to message Roz again. I was scared that my mom would lie. Roz told me that this time we could hold her accountable. Now that we know the truth. Roz messaged me and said, "Trust me, I'm right there with you. We shouldn't have to go through this again. But that is life for you. It never slows down or stops for anything. You'll always be able to trust me. I'm always by your side. I love you so, so much." This conversation shaped me to let me know that it is okay to ask for guidance and reassurance. Life is a crazy journey that we are all on, and no one is for sure the destination. It is okay to let your guard down to the ones that you know you can count on. On the journey of my life, I came here to Alice Lloyd. Here is where I learned how crucial studying would be. When I took my first history test during the first semester, I scored 64%. After realizing that without studying, my grade would suffer, I started making study guides using Quizlet.com. When it was time for the next test, I was nervous, but at least semi-prepared. I got my test back and saw I got an 80%. I was thrilled with that score because it was a big jump. I messaged Roz about my improvement. She said, "I'm so very proud of you, Tay." I attempted to downplay my score increase and told Roz the bonus points were the only thing that helped. Roz said, "You still showed progress." This conversation helped shape me to who I am by allowing me to understand that results aren't everything. Progress is more than results. I allow these heartfelt conversations with Roz to shape me and continue shaping me. I will use her words to be a role model for others. Believe in the beauty of things. Know that I don't always have to keep my guard up and to always try to see the positive in the negative. This story started years ago when I first got Facebook and is still happening. I'm just reaching the age to where the fun is supposed to begin. So I guess my story is just reaching the climax of the plot. I know if I need anything, whether it be a shoulder to cry on, someone to listen to me rant about my nonsense, or even a good laugh, my sister will always be there for me. She is just a message away. Back to my line 12 of where I'm from, that states, I'm from the messages shared from my older sister. If I were to expand on it, I would now say this. I'm from the messages sent to me from Roz, my older sister, the words coming from nothing but the goodness from her heart, the uplifting words of encouragement coming from behind the screen. And that is where I'm from, Taylor's version.